It's about to go down with Marc and Cathey, a live coaching show about dropping ideas. Marc and Cathey coach and have conversations with brilliant idea creators who are reimagining the world through the expression of their words, thoughts, and action.
Hey, everybody. So excited. It's about to go down. I'm Cathey Armillas.
And I am Marc Williams, and we are here today with a phenomenal woman, right? If you know the poem by Maya Angelou, Phenomenal Woman, then you know that this poem was written about this phenomenal woman who is here with us today, and so many other phenomenal women like Cathey Armillas too, right? But today we are here with the phenomenal, amazing Crystal Bonds, principal and founder of Changing Norms. And she is here today as a thought leader, an educational leader, an amazing and phenomenal leader with an idea about adopting a school district to create a perfect school district that can be replicated so that we can start to address the challenges that our disadvantaged youth have been going through historically in their neighborhoods. So Crystal, Miss Phenomenal, tell us a little bit about why you are bringing this idea to the forefront.
Oh, so many ideas and so many things to think about. First, thank you for having me on your show. I'm excited about this. But when I think about neighborhoods that have been historically disadvantaged, I often lament about the incredulity for people or the failure to believe that racism, systematic racism, is not only a fact, but has been a factor or a variable to consider when trying to come up with, trying to find a resolve. For example, in the 1920s, Harlem was a proud Black capital of the world that rose spectacularly, but it began to disintegrate after the Depression. And if we look at city maps from 2021 and we overlap them with those redlining maps, 1938, even through gentrification, the schools and the parks, in those areas still far trail their surrounding neighborhood schools. And so I ask, how can a school district be historically at the lowest performing for over 100 years?
Wow. How can they? Yeah.
Right.
What has been your personal connection to this?
Yeah.
Well, I grew up in one of the disadvantaged neighborhoods historically, and Jamaica, Queens. And as an elementary school student, I was, pulled out for special classes, math and science. When we went to junior high school in 1970s, there was a busing program that would bus you to a better neighborhood, a more advantaged school district, so that you could get a better education. So we were bused to an area called Howard Beach in Queens, and every day students were beat up, spat on, and called the N-word, and on and on and on, till when my parents, when it was time to go to high school, they said, you were coming back to the neighborhood school. Come back to the neighborhood school. And in one of the neighborhood schools that I attended was one of the worst performing schools in the city. And then the crack era hit. And it not only decimated our area, it also decimated my family, personal family members. And, I always felt that a person's demography shouldn't be their destiny. Because this is where you live doesn't mean this should be your trajectory of what happens to you, right? Or lack thereof. My children went to school, and we were private school, but then we went to public school once they had gotten older, had, of course, some racial microaggressions, go to college, have to deal with, my daughter was going to be an engineer, and at her school, one person, the professor who was her teacher had said, wrote a white paper that stated Blacks are born intellectually inferior, and they don't have the intellectual capacity to work with their counterparts or be in these high-performing colleges and universities. So, basically, it's a waste of time in affirmative action. I become a principal, and it's went to joined education, and when I was as a principal, I became a master principal. So I have a really high performing, resource rich school, and 8 blocks away, I'm a mentor and a master principal for a school, helping the principal, transition into principalship and help with academics. And it was 8 blocks away, yet 2 worlds apart. And when you saw the disadvantage, the trajectory, of what was going on, and you look at the maps, you say, well, this is the neighborhood in Harlem, this is the same thing. But then you just saw how different it was in one geographic area. How can it, the have and the have not so close? But I thought if we could bring together and look at these districts, and let's say adopt a district and assess the schools by not only academics, but their needs-based, and see what are the things that they need as the district, because a lot of them are trending the same types of things that they need. And if we can create a space or establish this linchpin of effective practices that are replicable and sustainable, or like a hub of a repository for people can contribute time or money or resources to help and create a framework, I think it could be replicated in other spaces.
Crystal, first of all, thank you for dedicating your life to education and furthering education. And it, when I first heard your personal story, I was like, I think many people would want to walk away from a problem that is really large and there's so many facets to it and be like, oh, well, I made it out somehow, and, and walk away from it. So first of all, I really just want to applaud you for, going right back in and working your way up into this space where you're master principal. I didn't even know that was a thing, but I get it. Immediately I heard it. I was like, oh yeah, she's master principal. And I can already feel the work that you've put into this. So I just want to start by thanking you for doing that work. It's super important. And I think one of the issues, if we just talk about this really quick from selling this as an idea, because, we first as humans, we have to buy into this emotionally as an idea before we actually, buy into it with our time or with our money and our resources. So I love how much we're already going the route of simplifying it, because it doesn't mean that we're trying to oversimplify the solutions, but we simplifying this idea, to create an adopted district. We already know what that means. There's a framework out there for adopt a road, adopt this. So we understand what it is. And, I love the space that you're coming with, this needs base. And so I want to talk about that for a second. You have said before that how schools get graded right now is just really off. Can we talk about that for a second, so we can kind of talk about what it would take to make a district in a perfect way that we could replicate it?
Sure. We are predominantly graded on our academics. So we have quality reviews. We have, there's different types of things, but it talks about, mostly your academics, but other factors are brought in, like how many students, the socioeconomic status of, if you have Title I, that's how many people, students have free and reduced lunch. They will add how many students with special needs, and maybe English language learners, and how much growth or decrease of academics, that growth in academics, how you move your students during the state exams. I think that something that should also be added is about how long has this type of school and or district been in this performance level? Maybe include also, I think some reports may include suspensions, or how incidences, not just suspensions, but incidences for the that happen in the school. It could include some things about the digital divide. Now, the digital divide is the lack of resources with technology that many students may have had. And during COVID, that was totally exposed because some may not have had computers and or Wi-Fi in the broadband, and or they use one computer for all of the people in the house. You know, and there were multiple users, and there was no one space for the students to study. Also, you know, and also there are certain, not that we have to define the level of education for our parents, but sometimes we have to say, what are the resources that the families need? Are, you know, sometimes single parenting and or what else would they need to know more about? I guess student support at home, because we know that if a student, I think there's studies that show if a student is third grade is a predictor for whether or not a student will go to prison, whether or not a student will graduate from high school. So what are some of the predictors that we're seeing? What are some of the things that we're seeing so that we can disrupt some of the trends? So we're looking for trends that have happened, and how do we disrupt those trends?
So really bigger picture stuff, right?
Yes.
Because when you just rely on like the one thing, if you go straight to the academics, then you don't see the big picture. You don't see
the big picture.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, and including in different appropriate grade level things. So let's say when we get to high school or before high school, how do we determine what students are going to want to be with the career? If I mean, although I love sports, but when we have these career days, when the students write what they like to be, everyone cannot be a basketball player and a tennis player. So how do we expose them to different things? But the thing is, some of the young people, they don't even know what they don't know, right?
Yeah.
How, if you haven't had this type of a profession in your family, you haven't seen it, you haven't observed it, how do you even know that this is something that you'd like to do? So how do we expose? How do we have apprenticeships? How do we, you know, let them understand that these are so many different career paths, and changing the headspace about what they're good at. Young people love what they're good at. And so if they have a bad class or they may have a bad interaction with a teacher and they didn't do well in this one particular class, oh, I don't like math. It may not be that you don't like math. Maybe it's just that you just had a bad experience. Let's change this anti-intellectual culture and put people on a different path with academics.
Yeah.
I love that term, change the anti-intellectual culture. You remind me, Crystal, of being a young kid and being teased about reading a book, right? Bookworm is a negative connotation. Nerd is a negative connotation.
Not anymore, Mark.
No,
you were an early adopter, that's all.
Yeah, but Crystal, here's what I want to ask you as we travel this road that Cathey has set out for us, right? You've mentioned before that school systems have tried, I'll say, something similar, where they have sent in resources, or a company will come in and work with a particular school. But that's not exactly what you're talking about, right? You're not talking about, I'll just name drop. It's not like Apple coming in to ABC school and dumping a whole bunch of computers in for that one school. You're talking about something different. So just tell us a little bit about how your idea is different from what some people are trying to do with the school district.
Sometimes we will see, whether it's Apple or IBM, they will come and they will partner with the school. And oftentimes it's a relationship between maybe the CEO of the company and maybe one of our top execs in the Department of Education. But sometimes they're not sustainable because that was based off of a friendship or a trial, if you will. But what I'm looking for is something that's so ingrained in the district that it's looking at the different facets so that it can be replicable and not just for one school. It's like, imagine asking school leaders, like, what are your needs? And then there's assessing the schools and the students and pairing them the schools geographically with the same needs, right? And then imagine surrounding these schools with partners together to satisfy some of these needs, whether it's like, oh, well, these two schools need let's say a social worker or a mental health facility. Maybe we could split fund it because some of the things are geographically together. And also, we can never forget the generosity of others can change lives through unprecedented philanthropic giving. Investing in these districts to closing the digital divide or providing technology. Imagine organizations that will meet with, like, some of the areas that we're discussing may have a lot of public housing, and some of the areas are riddled with violence and gangs, and sometimes they don't have the capacity to work with the students. But we also need to bring in organizations and people. The term we like to use is get in where you fit in, right? So if this particular company or organization deals with gang prevention, well, let them come in and assist us, because everyone, sometimes we kind of try to be jack of all trades and master of none. Let people do what they can do with what's within their wheelhouse, so we can have the specialists. I'm imagining roadmaps and career pipelines, virtual job shadowing, career fairs, and let's say if there are such things as satellite eyeglasses and satellite dentistry. People may not have had the resources to get healthcare and or mental health. How do we so doing this assessment to say, let's do these wraparound services to establish these effective practices is what I'm looking at. Not just, oh, this is the academics. This is, how many suspensions you had. You're rated a D. There's so much more behind that story. Why? Simon Sinek talked about Sinek. He did the golden circle, and I had written down something. He talks about the neocortex, where people that is the biology of human decision making. So people don't just buy what you're doing; they buy why you're doing it. So I think the why of why this is different is that it's more holistic. It's more inclusive. It's more granular in the detail about saying, you're right. Historically, this has been this way for 100 years. This is more than just Black people saying, oh, we just can't do better, or, taking a back seat. There's some historical challenges that have gone on, but together, I think we can do it, because no one entity has been able to resolve it. So we need to band together in some way to find some type of process or framework to start changing this pathway and moving the needle on student achievement, because the end result would be student achievement. But all these other factors, it's like, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If these basic needs aren't met, the students are not self-actualizing, period, the end.
Yeah, Crystal. Oh my gosh, there's so much there, because there's so much work to do. And again, I really applaud that you're in the space. One of the things I wonder, I love it. I just started thinking about it. I'm like, everything is kind of written in the name of your organization, changing norms. So if we kind of even just go back to that for a second and go, like, what would it take to change norms? What can we create? If I go to this idea of, I'm going to adopt a district, and I hear you, this issue where, like, you might have somebody doing like a spot thing where there's a relationship and somebody comes in and tries to fix something, and then, the relationship goes away, but you're also kind of like bleeding out from all these other areas, and this little concentrated effort doesn't help. But what if you use what if there was some way to put an actual, like, framework that people could remember? I think it would help with the adoption, this idea of adopt a district. What would it take? Is it like a 3-part system? Does it take academics? Does it take historical data? Does it take a piece of this? Definitely has to be the mindset. You touched on it so much. Emotions play into this so much, like the emotions of people buying into it, but the emotions of the kids. It's not sexy to be an accountant, right? That's why nobody chooses. Nobody says. But, if you ask any adult, I think, like, what was your favorite class? No matter what their answer is, I bet you $1 million it will be because they had a really good teacher or experience. The teacher made it fun, or, and so we kind of have to, I think, applying that same model to the idea. How can we simplify this so people can easily buy? And I love the get in where they fit in, but then I would be asking myself, well, what am I fitting into? Yeah, exactly. So give me what I need to fit into. If you give me a clear definition of the things, I can easily self-identify. I can go, oh yeah, here I can fit in right there. Oh, those two, I don't fit in. I can't help with that. It's not my skill set.
Okay. I want to just go back one space when you said about the name changing norms. And I just want to tell a quick story about that. I was in a grocery store when I was master principal down the block from the school. And I was at the store and I was paying for something. And the young girls behind me, one had an EBT welfare card. And one of the girls, her friend told her, I can't wait to get my card. So this was something that she was aspiring to get a welfare EBT card. And, this is what she thought was great. But those types of stories, those types of normalcies that they had is something that I said, why should that be a normalcy? What would make her say that? Because she thought that this was great, that she can get some assistance, instead of saying, oh, you know what, well, when I, get this job or whatever it is, or create my own business, or I'm an entrepreneur, this is what I'm going to do. So that's some of the things that contributed to the name. With regards to a clear pathway, I'm thinking where it would be a space where once there was a needs assessment for the district, and once there was a space where whatever this rubric is that we are determining the need level for the schools and for the district, then there's a space where the educators, the legislators, the organizations, and the companies come together, right? Because now we have this information of the needs of the school. Yeah. And then people can say, oh, well, you know what, I can contribute money to this. I can contribute. Our old company can, give a 3-year commitment of $25,000 or $50,000 to try to, because this is not just an event, it's a process. This is not something that's going to be a quick fix. So getting people to sign on and wanting to be a part of it. So if the companies could say that, if the legislators could, I don't know, create some type of a legislature that could state, if companies give internships and or a requirement that they had to do apprenticeships for young people because they're graduating and some don't have any skills, especially if they if some of them are not going to school. College may not be for everyone, but how are we preparing these young people to be, support themselves? There could be the organizations where schools are really having trouble dealing with behavior. There could be, mental health, because the power of mental health is we are underestimating the power of mental health. There could be, so there's so many things that, mentorship, there are statistics that show that, 70% of students who have mentors sometimes go into that field and or feel supported and someone that they could talk to because they include them as in their personal board of directors. So once we get the information that's needed, how can these schools be supported? Maybe at the school level, because just giving computers to a school doesn't mean that the kids are going to learn it, doesn't mean that the teachers are trained in it, and doesn't mean it's always going to work. Just giving money to a school doesn't mean that the school leader may know where to put it. And so having this also hub of resources that, wow, we specialize in this. Here's a wealth of information or companies that can help. So it's about first finding the need and not just giving everybody the same thing as well.
Yeah. Could it be like and I don't know if this is the right terminology, but could it be a need score? Could you start with a need score? Could you?
I like it. I like that. I like that.
That could be the way that you, because some of the things that you talked about, Crystal, are really in depth, and I love it. And so maybe there's a way to kind of create that need score, and that would be helpful for, I think, people that are. I think this would be a good bridge for people that are already in that space, that have already bought into it and are like, oh, okay, now like where do we allocate the resources?
I like that.
I want to go back to the emotional piece. And now we've all kind of said it. And Marc, I'm going to go back to something you said before. You were like a bookworm, and it wasn't sexy back then to be a nerd, and it is now. And then Crystal just said the story that she talked about with the two girls in the store is a sad story of a norm that's carried through. And I just want to show how powerful that is, because right now being a nerd is like the coolest thing, right? That norm has changed. Because of course, all these people that have created, we're in a digital era right now, because of people creating tech companies and being very successful. Now, all of a sudden, it's not so bad to be a nerd. So what is it that we need to change these norms of Crystal, you've said this, so I'm just going to repeat something you've said. It's like on the ground level where the kids are at, they don't even know what they don't know. They don't know the array of possibilities. They don't know what an anthropologist is or what they do, or like how that could maybe be cool because of the kind of personality they have. That might be a great, career for them. They're only getting exposed to certain things. So I think the need score would be really good. I don't know, Marc, what do you think about? I feel like there's two things. You're selling everybody at the level with the adopted district. And then inside, there's got to be this like system where it can sell again, right? It's another door. You walk through the house. Okay, I'm in the house. I believe I want to help adopt a district. But once I get in, I have to figure out what room do I go to? Which room can I walk through and help?
So, and would you say this need score is a needs based off of academics, based off behavior and incidences, maybe socioeconomic? So this need score you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they have these things, Crystal, where like, I created maybe like 5 years ago. I created it based off of some other things that people did, but I created a relationship wheel for me and my partner. And then it had 10 areas of criteria that I came up with. One of them might be adventure and fun. The other one was finances. And, and so I just kind of created, spirituality, and you go down the list of things that are important to me. I created this like wheel. And so, yes, I think it could be, the need score could be based off of 10 things, 5 things, 7 things. And then you go, because you did talk about when you come in with one data point, it's terrible. You can't just come in with the academics and say, because even if you go the opposite way, oh, the academics aren't good here, let's flood a bunch of money in. The money doesn't do good because we don't know what the whole need is. So the need score will tell you quickly, oh, well, we've had incidents. Well, what kind of incident? And then we could dive deeper in the need score if needed. I think there's just kind of this score that shows that's what I'm envisioning, and I feel like there's this loop that the kids get on, right? There's a loop that the community gets on. And until you can put a stop on this loop, everything will be norm, right? This is why you want to change it. This is, if you called it the normal loop is don't change anything. Just keep doing things the way that they are. That's normal. It's not working, but it's normal. And so it's for us as people who are trying to help. It's like getting off of this loop because we believe that we can just pour money into it. And then it's also changing the norm at the base level with the kids of like, oh, the normal is just go to school and try to get through school. And then, I don't know, maybe do what my family did, or maybe do like aspire to be a basketball star because I'm tall and I love basketball. And then when that doesn't pan out, what? And so getting off the loop. I don't know, Marc, what do you think?
There's a couple of things that I think. First of all, coming from that education background, for some reason, Crystal, you'll appreciate this one. I kept thinking Venn diagram. Remember the Venn diagram?
Right.
And I also started thinking about the loop and the charts, and I started thinking about that. I love the need score. When I hear about the need score, I think about a score in one area. So I'm starting to think, but how do you then highlight the other areas? Because what I'm hearing from Crystal is traditionally the needs have been the academic needs, the behavior needs, right? And so I would love for us to think about how do you highlight the fact that there are so many other needs that are not being addressed. Let's stop going to the same old needs and let's stop giving a score to the same old needs, right? So what if there was some kind of I'll use the term wheel, not that that has to be the term that we land on, but what if there's a wheel or some kind of a chart that shows a whole bunch of different types of needs, which can even include the academic and the behavior, but so many other things, right? And so we can see the whole picture. And now maybe there's a need score for each thing on that wheel so that we now know where do we put, our greatest attention. And if we're talking about get in where you can fit in, I don't know, let's just say there are 10 different things on this wheel and there's a score for each one of them. Now, as a company that works with disadvantaged youth who are thinking about their careers, or maybe I have a mentorship program. Well, now I know that's somewhere where I can fit in, right? And what if this wheel, after we identify all the different organizations that we want to be a part of this hub, now everybody can take a look at the wheel and say, you know what? I see that the need score for this is here and we're good for that. We can take care of that. But let's put the entire wheel on the wall. I'm going, I don't know where I'm going with this metaphor of the wheel, but I just want to be able to see all of the different needs, the scores in each different area. Let's see, Crystal, Cathey starts picking up a pen and a paper. And if anybody thought that Cathey is just writing words, she's got visions upon visions upon visions. Go ahead with that vision.
Right.
Well, I think you were going somewhere with that, Mark. So I just started drawing out what you said. But if you imagine putting little dots on each one, you would quickly see that it's out of whack. It's not, you know what I mean? If you start drawing with each little pie slice, if you drew from 0 maybe being in the center, 10 being out, here, like, oh, our need in this particular area, oh, it's at like a 5. But then it gives you, and I think it's always important to look at the up down, like where has it ticked from? Because you could really quickly do a need score and then like go, okay, well, in the second area here, we're a 3, but shoot, we're up from a 1, and that's a big deal. And it's way different than being down from a 7.
Right.
Yes.
And so it does give you a little historical data too. Like it gives you a really big picture. I think we are getting somewhere with how to simplify that,
Well, let's also add to this that it gives us this idea that, this is going along with Crystal's point, that then you could take a look at this wheel, this circle, this diagram, we'll figure it out.
Score.
Right? And we can start to see, wait, maybe this is why Crystal Bonds is right, that this is an historical issue. It has not changed since, when did you say, Crystal? 1928. It has not
1938
changed.
was when they had the historical, the map that said this area is the most disadvantaged in the redlining map. Mm-hmm.
Right. So we take a look at this need score and we see, oh, well, maybe this is why things haven't changed since 1938, because we keep feeding all of the supplies and funding into the same needs area, which, by the way, I don't know if I'd say it has a low need score, but it's not the only score we should be paying attention to. And we've been putting all of this money into this one area. How many, excuse me, I'm such an English teacher. How many times are you going to go to the supermarket and put food on the table? I keep telling you, I'm not hungry anymore. I don't need any more food, right?
Yeah.
I need something to drink. Right. The same solutions into a problem when we're ignoring everything else. And so that's why I like the idea of taking a look at all the needs and then going back to, and I agree with you, Cathey, so we could help people to see where they can get in, where they can fit in. And one other thing I'll say before I jump off this diatribe, I love that word, by the way, diatribe. Crystal said something that I think is really important for all of those people who want to support Crystal's idea. We're not just looking for supplies and money. We're looking for services, right? Come in and actually don't just fly over in your helicopter and drop off a couple of supplies. Land the helicopter, become a part of the community, stay here for a while, dedicate your time and effort to this school district until we can get it up and running, and then we can do it again. Chris Amara, am I reading that correctly?
I think that you are definitely reading it correctly. Because this was a historical problem. We're not going to, you can't just drop off in a year and then say money for 1 year and just say, oh, so you haven't really had much growth in this 1 year, so we're pulling out. We're moving and we're leaving. I think if looking at the details, something as simple as retention rates. A lot of the schools in these areas, the teachers don't stay. Hard to staff areas. Sometimes they have lots of new principals because principals are removed due to low scores, but the low scores have been there historically. So, there's so many things I think that we need to see. Wow, they have a lot of teacher turnover. That means that students, a lot of student turnover. Like what's happening in that school? These things that can kind of get a score, but that it's not anyone's particular fault, but this is the stats of the school. So we have to look differently. So what other resources do the teachers need more? Which they would hate to hear, more professional development. What is it that makes the students stay or make the teachers stay? I think that we need to look at that. But I just want to pause to say, I love the needs score. I love that, and I like the idea of 10 because there are lots of different things, but if you get too large, then you won't even know, like it's too hard to read. I saw your wheel and I was thinking, like, even if we had the wheel, right?
Look at her wheel. That's better than mine.
Wheel, and then the middle is what you would tell that there would be a dotted line of something to say, what is the city average? So just by a visual, you would be able to tell what that is. And so then fill in where this school fits. Right? Are they below the line or they above the line? So what are the needs that need to be addressed? Like, so it's like we need the stats, but as a visual learner for me, that would work very, very well. So I love this idea. I love it.
I would actually recommend keeping the pie down to as few slices as you can. And I think you can go deeper once I think every pie can go deeper. And here's something I thought of when you were talking, and I think Marc, you saw my face. I saw you react to my face. She was talking and I was like, oh, I have one of those ideas. I can't. I think you have to ask this. I think this is a really important question, Crystal. And I think
I'm writing.
This is, yeah. Okay. Everybody ready for their pen? I hope I didn't oversell this. I was thinking when she was talking, how you can always ask this question, and it should be the question you always ask. This is because this is the name of the organization. How can you help change the norm? So that's always the question. The question's always like, okay, well, we just realized that our need score showed in this area, we're down. Don't forget about what resources have been done in the past, forget about money, forget about anything in the moment. If you were asking me as a specialist in this area, like Crystal, Marc and I, we specialize in communication. So if you were like, oh, in this district, like communication skills are bad, they're low. Instead of just asking me, Marc and I could be like, well, we could teach classes, I guess, but if you were like, no, how do you change the norm? That's a bigger question. Because then I'm like scratching my head going, well, what is the norm? Then I'm asking myself, well, is the norm that kids think that communication isn't important? Well, that makes me train different. So I'm going to approach this need in a different way, because I first have to say, well, what is the norm? And then how will I actually change it? And I think that will make people be more solution oriented. Right?
I like that.
And it's a question that I think, because of the name of your organization, I think this, like, for instance, I wrote in my marketing book, because I thought this was like the coolest thing ever. Southwest Airlines, they have the highest rating of any airline ever historically, higher than the post office, which is not hard to beat, of course, but their customer service ratings are really high. And if you look at their business model, you're like, but it's really weird, because they're like it's almost like taking a bus in the air. Like the way that they run it, you have this number system and you have to show up and you're like, you're boarding first, and it's kind of weird. But you know what they've done really well? They've created a norm in the expectation, right? And they created a norm. So their expectation was, hey, we are the low fare airline, and you can expect that. And so you can expect other things with it. So part of what you're paying for is that we're not going to board the normal way. We're going to do it a different way. Do you know the question that they ask themselves internally? Everything that they ask themselves, this is the question that they do internally. They say, if somebody says, oh, it's somebody's birthday party, they go, okay, what do we do? Do we buy that person a cake, or do we sing happy birthday over the loudspeaker, the intercom in the office or something? They go, okay, the question is, what will make us the low fare airline? What will make us the low fare airline? What will make us the low fare airline? And when they keep asking that question, people are coming up with creative solutions to not be cheap, but to do it. So then they're like, oh, well, let's go sing happy birthday. Let's go bomb this lady in our office with a huge happy birthday singing. So if you created the same kind of thing, Crystal, I think internally, of like, how can you help change the norm? And then keep beating that question in. How can you help change the norm? How can you help change the norm? How can you help change the norm? I think it will remind people that it's not just about money. It's not just about doing what we've done in the past. It's about exploring what was normal and how we can change it.
I like that. That's going to be one of the pages on my website.
How can you help change the norm? Yes.
How can you help change the norm? Through philanthropic giving, through your time, through your resources, or creativity. Like what is it? Right?
What is the norm? Well, and then I would ask people, if you're going to do that on the webpage, and if you do it in your programs or whatever you do, I think you should say, first, find out what the norm is. Like, I care about this school. I care about this district. I live in this city, or I don't care. It's a city next to me. I care about what's going on. What's the norm right now? Is, Crystal, you talked about like the crack era and stuff, right? And I started, because I grew up in the 80s. I remember all this. And I started, if you were to drop me back into the 80s as an adult, and I would try to fix things, that would be the first thing I would say, like, how has this normalized? Okay, well, the norm right now is this. Like, so what's the need assessment's very different, then as it might be now, or maybe it's the same, or maybe it's worse, or maybe, again, that's looking at the need score and then looking at it historically. And so I think this might be just a powerful question, but it came from you. You were talking, it just bubbled up in me when you were talking.
So my favorites are this. So what kind of question would you call this? That's the essential question?
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful. The essential question. I was thinking grounding.
We're such educators, Crystal.
I love it. You guys are nerds.
Y'all do now question. It's not the do now question. It's the essential question.
The essential question, right? Everything has to have a label, and I always did that with the young, the children, because if you don't, they call it that thing. What's the thing? Right? What's that thing?
Yeah,
so everything has to have a label.
Oh no, I love that, Crystal. I was like, the grounding thing. The grounding question. I think yours is better. I'm going to ask you the essential question. How can you help change the norm? How can you help?
I like it.
And then you can change you from we if you're talking to a committee, or and so we can just adjust that. Ooh, I love that. We already have really good concepts, Marc.
Yes. You know what else I love about that? And goes back to your example, Cathey, of us as communication experts. It not only forces you to think about what the norm is, but it forces you to think about why it's the norm, and to delve a little bit deeper into that, so that you can then start to figure out how you can address it directly. So I love the way that idea channels the focus, which I think is also what Crystal was talking about through the concept of get in where you fit in. so that those particular needs can be addressed.
Oh, I could see her asking you, Marc, like I could see her saying, okay, Marc, you're a communication expert. Let me ask you the essential question. How can you give it a try, Crystal? Give it a shot. I think you should try it on for size.
Right. Wait, I have a visual. I am going to my changing norms background on. And so now, Marc, you are the communication expert. I'd like to ask you, how can you change the norm? How can you help to change the norm?
Yeah.
Wow. Crystal, how did that feel asking that question?
Yeah, how did that feel?
I liked it. I like it. I can envision it on one of the pages of the website that says, how can you change the norm? And then there's partner with us. You can join and, get our newsletter. You can donate financially, time, money, resources. I think that page is going to be something that's very important. I'm also thinking that one of the pages can have a video narrative of talking about this instead of just the words, and end with, how can you change the norm?
Help.
Right?
I think help is important to put in there. Don't miss.
How can you help?
I think this is a critical word because
help.
The you makes me overwhelmed. This is where we started the conversation. How can I change the norm? I cannot. I cannot. I can't change the norm. That overwhelms me. I'm peace. I'm out. But how can I help? You know what I mean? So I do think that is a critical word. And I'm not even the English teacher, Marc. What happened here? Like you're rubbing off on me.
Because it's not an English teacher thing. It's a wordsmith thing.
Yeah,
it's psychology behind language. And you have mastered the psychology behind language.
But I do think that's critical, Crystal. I do. I think that Marc, when you asked him that question, he could answer you and go, well, I can't change the norm, but I could help by trying to change the way kids feel about communicating. And that is
how can you, or what can you do to? How can you help change the norm? Or what can you do to help change the norm? Either one.
I don't think you need it. Because I think you leave it on the broader open. How can you help? Then that makes me think about what can I do? Because maybe something I can do to help is, then that gives me the autonomy, I think, to do it however I can.
Right.
Maybe I'm at a point in my life where, because we all have the different points in our life. Maybe I'm at a point in my life where when I was a single mom back then, money was not, I could never have helped with money. Like that would never have been the thing, but maybe now it's like, well, I have a lot less time because but I can give money and that. So I immediately you have that autonomy, but I'm like, okay, no, I don't have money, but you know what I can do? I'm really good at motivating students right now. Like it's my thing. You know who I watched do, and this, Crystal, I know, because you worked with Marc. The first time I came to Brooklyn Tech and I was walking around with Marc through the halls, I will never forget this. I went there to teach a class. Actually, I taught a class on communication. I was helping teach a small group of kids, and I was walking through the halls with Marc, and kids were like, "Yo, Mr. Williams, what's up?" Like, "Hey, yo!" And I was just like, Marc has definitely breaking the norm. He wasn't the assistant principal that was like, oh boy, here comes, boy.
Let's get away. No.
Let's get away. Mm-hmm. They were flocking towards him. And so he changed the norm of what it was to be an educator.
Yes. Right.
He did it through motivation because Marc is the most positive, uplifting person I know in the world.
Right. So he did something different. Him and Sam Adewame, when they would teach, they were like, this is fun.
Yeah.
Fun. They use the
real
word fun, right? Some people say, oh, it's nice, it's exciting. They say fun because they loved what they did, and inspiring children and young people, and they're young adults. So yes, he definitely broke barriers and what was considered the norm to have a relationship with our youngsters. Definitely.
That touches my heart so much, Marc. So sorry, I didn't mean to embarrass you if I did. I'm sure I couldn't.
No, you didn't. I appreciate it. But let me give you a little bit of history here as well, and let me throw it back to Crystal. When I worked with Crystal, you may remember the year where out of 1,200 kids, about 60 of them were young Black men. Remember that?
Yes.
And Crystal made the effort. And you know what's funny, now that I'm thinking about it, for me, probably not for you, but for me, this was the introduction to changing norms. Because it was the norm that such a small population of 1,200 people were 60 young Black men. It was the norm to just kind of give those 60 young Black men the same support that everybody else was getting. But what Crystal did is she brought those young men together. She brought in a lot of different teachers and educators in the building together. She was bringing outside resources into the building, all to make a commitment, not just to come and speak to the boys just once or twice, but to have this ongoing relationship, this ongoing hub, this ongoing effort to change norms based on their needs. So the birth of the idea was there, and it is so amazing now to see it come full circle, or shall I say circle? There we go with the wheel, right?
Wheel.
But to
You see the Changing Norms logo? You see that?
Yeah, it's a circle. It's a circle.
Yes, yes. And Crystal, may I add, with this idea, I love the vision of schools around the city, around the state, around the country, around the world, now adopting this concept of the needs score.
Maybe
I love it.
Maybe you change it to the norm score too. Maybe you tie into the, I don't mean to throw a wrench in this like right now. We got all excited. I haven't 100% been sold since the minute it came out of my mouth, because there's a little negative connotation to need. It is technical. It is correct. But I don't like to view anybody as having a need. I mean, they do, although they do, but like, does that make sense? It's like the mind is so powerful that if we could change the norm, you change the need at the same time, if that makes sense.
Got it.
So I don't know, you could stew on that, but I think that if you really wanted to get technical, it is the need score, right? This is the need, or but it is a norm too, right? It actually is technically the norm. If the norm right now is the academics are low, that's the norm score, that's the number. So there's a piece of the norm score that's the technical piece, and then there's the emotional or the mindset piece to it.
Okay.
I like the need score.
Yeah, you like the need score better? Yeah.
The need score speaks to people who are not in education and they haven't sold in, they don't know anything about it. It's just clear. It's clear. And it could be, need score. No, I mean, I don't know. I like the idea of the need score, but I do get the negative connotation, but sometimes we don't want to flower things too much because we just want to get down to the nitty gritty that This is what we found are the needs,
Yeah, so sometimes you put on a dress and you go, oh, it looks good, and then you put on another one and you go, okay, that one it is. The other one it is. Like, I'm going back to the other one.
Right.
This one definitely doesn't look better.
Right.
Okay.
Mark, I never even thought about the whole thing with the boys, and it was the young men, and it was because I had seen that males of color came into school at the lowest rate, but left statistically at the highest percentage wise at the highest rate. And I didn't understand, why was this the norm? But I never thought that this was even a part of it. I was just always looking and investigating and trying to find solutions or the reasons why, like what's happening here. So that's what birthed it. And to this day, those young men, some of their mothers found me and said, because of that group, this is what's going on. And they reach out, look, I'm doing well. And some of the things that they said, I couldn't believe it. I was like, young people, they just forgot. We were doing it because we wanted to, because it's something that needed to be done. And it was great. So thank you for making that connection. I didn't even.
Yeah, Mark, you know what you made me realize through this conversation, Mark, when you said that, you made me realize Crystal's been doing this Crystal's literally actually created the whole system. She just doesn't know how to because it's natural to you just said it, you go in and you investigate and you figure it out. So to you, it's almost like you're in a car with somebody, right? I'm gonna do this analogy really quick. You're in a car with somebody that knows how to get somewhere, and you're that person. You're the driver. You know how to get there. But then you switch drivers, and now all of a sudden I'm driving. I don't know how to get there. If you don't actually tell me how to get there, I won't get there. I don't know that I'm supposed to make a right on 6th Avenue. I don't know that I'm supposed to turn, and so I think it's just doing something that you've already been doing and putting these labels that you like to put on things, Crystal, to make it easier for people to get into that same headspace that you already were in. You've already naturally went into a situation and said, what? Why is this like this? Oh, we need to do something here. We need to adjust that. We need to fix that.
I tell my teachers, like, if I come up with these concepts, I am a big picture thinker. I know that I want to get to that mountain. I know this is what could be done, but I need help navigating to get there. Like, I know that's where the end result should be. But the little granular pieces and how to tease it out to make it palatable for others is, I think throughout the years doing this type of work, not realizing that it had a bigger mission, but seeing it in different facets and now pulling it together, I need to make it clear, palatable, and so that other people can attach to it and not think it's so vast that they're like, oh, this is too big, this won't work, So I need to learn how to, and these things that you've given me, I have some good takeaways.
Well, I definitely want to hear about the takeaways, but I do want to fit this in first. You said ultimately you want this to be replicated. And what we discovered is that you've been doing it all along. And what you said is that sometimes you're a big vision thinker, right? And sometimes it's hard for you to break it down. I would say our advice to you is take one of those examples where you've already done what you want to see done in other places. Like, take working with those group of young men, and then take what you did, break it down step by step, and then put that on paper.
With the needs score. Yeah.
You've already created the steps, but it's like Cathey said, when I'm the driver and now I'm trying to teach you how to do it, it's so big picture for me because it's so natural that I've never taken the time to just take what I already have done and just broke it down in step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. So just revisit what you've done successfully already, break it down, and you've already got your adopt a district model that can be replicated anywhere with your state-of-the-art trademark Cathey Armillas special needs score.
And the Crystal Bonds, labeled this very well. The trademarked, essential question, right? Because it's an essential question of how can you help change the norm? Yeah.
Ooh, I love how you just wrapped that up, Cathey, because you just wrapped it up with what the actual essential question is. How can you help to change the norms?
Yeah. So Crystal, this is kind of a fun part of the episode because we always, and Marc and I, anytime we're coaching anybody an idea, we're always like, oh, there has to be a stopping point at some point. And
I'm not ready to stop.
I know, right? and I love it too, because it brings another starting point for the next conversation, the next conversation we have with you. And we now are starting in a better place. But I just wanted to ask you, I know we heard some of the things and you just said what we wrapped up, but what's kind of the biggest, what has gotten you most excited about what we talked about today?
The need score was monumental because it's something that you can actually apply. It's something tangible that people can see, and that they can assess, and that they can say, oh, I see. And also there's going to be data, but the wheel is a visual, which is, it speaks across all languages and everything. It's like, it's so multifaceted. So I love that. I love the essential question, because that's really the point. No matter how many people I approach, the question is, how can you help? How can you help this effort? And with it, there's so many ways to help. We're looking for funding, but funding's not the only resource. There's so many other things. There's ideas. There's being a thought partner, being being maybe on an advisory board. There's, giving ideas from your lens, whether you're a legislator or a company or a parent. Like, there's so many different things that people can give. How can you help? And I think, so those were like monumental. And speaking to the heartstrings of people, you had mentioned something about, well, I think even this question is about speaking to the heartstrings of them, trying to get people to say, that allows me autonomy to get in where I fit in. That allows me autonomy to think about something that maybe you haven't. And how can I add to your efforts? And Marc making me realize that, it's funny. Some principals like, why are you always so busy? Like, you don't have to. Your school has like 92 is the average score at GPA. Like, why are you even? What are you doing? Like, rest, right? And I said, I can't. It's like, I can't. How can you rest when you see this? It's like there's this like disequilibrium in my soul that it just speaks to, there's so much that we all have to do more of. How can you be at peace? I just can't. And so I thinking about these types of things I've always been doing, but I'm really kind of isolated this that says this needs to be done, but this type of work is my passion. And if I can look back at the things that I've done over the years, I can add them, I would say, in some form of fashion, and figure out, this is my driving force of my why is, how do we change this norm? How do we have different outcomes for people? How do we disrupt what could have gone down a bad path and change the norms of young people to have them have a brighter future where they couldn't even have seen themselves. So how do I take what I have done and pull it in here to get some success stories and use some of those things I've done? I didn't think about it. I didn't.
So good, Marc. Great. It's like you found something that was hidden in plain sight, right? Where she's this close to it, so she can't see like that. It's already been done and it's right there. Crystal, we'll wrap it up, but thank you for wrapping that up so eloquently. Thank you for your passion and your obsession for the why. It's so evident, and I love. That's why we love you. Like, I love
you back.
I love that you care about this so much. It makes me just feel so emotionally connected to you. And I know we just need to pour more of that crystal, like feeling into what you're doing. And so I'm super excited to see how all of this plays out, the need score and the essential question. We're going to wrap this up with like, how can people help change the norm? Crystal, how can they reach you? How can they get connected to what you're doing, even if they're from afar and they're not in your school district? How can they reach you? Can they go to your website? What's your website?
changingnorms.com. And it's in the very beginning stages as I am developing this, because thank you for what you're doing to help me narrow this down and make it palatable. But it's changingnorms.com. And we have a logo finally, and we're trying to develop. And soon there will be a space. It's in. I try to do it myself. It's not my wheelhouse. I'm over it. I had to get someone to help me. So I am, there's someone we were in website creation mode. So it will be available very soon, probably within a month, so that people can go to the site and say, look at what we have done, look at what we're doing, and how they can help to change the norm.
Thank you, Crystal. And if you are somebody out there watching, and the way that you can help change the norm is by helping with the website, reach out. Like, if you want to reach Marc and I, and if you're thinking about being on the show and you want us to explore your idea, you can always reach us at Marc and Cathey. You have to spell it out, and we both have unique names, so it's MARC, not no K. I was going to say, that's what I was trying to say. And Cathey, CATHEY @gmail. But we just want to end this with asking everybody. I want to point that question out. I think we should say it on 3. Ready? On 3, we say, what's the essential question? It's how can you help change the norm? All right, ready? On 3, everybody. 1, 2, 3.
How can you
help
help change the
change
norm?
the norms? Oh my God.